Okay, so we're going to talk about the addition of signs of numbers. Say that we have a -3 and we're adding it to a -8. The question is, what should the answer be? So remember that because we're adding numbers that have signs, we're adding two numbers, and both numbers have negative symbols on them. So that means that both numbers are negative. Now if we go back to the rules for adding numbers, we have that if the numbers have the same signs, and that's what we have here in this case, then we add the numbers. So that means that we're going to have to add these two numbers together. Now if we add 3 and 8, and we know that we're going to get 11. But the question is this 11 going to be positive or negative? Well, after you add the numbers, then you keep the sign of the number that has the largest absolute value. Which means that if you take a look at -3 and -8, the absolute value of a -3 is a +3. The absolute value of a -8 is a +8. This number is the one with the largest absolute value, so you keep the sign of that number, which is negative. So therefore, the answer for the sum of -3 and -8 is -11. But what if we have say a -7 plus a 5, +5? What should the answer for that be? Well, we notice that the sign of the 7 is negative, the sign of the 5 is positive. And remember that the reason why the sign of the 5 is positive is because it has no sign in front of it, so it is understood to be positive. Now, these two signs are different. So if the numbers have different signs, then we subtract the numbers. So that means that we have to subtract 7 and 5. Well, the answer then is 2. So the problem is, what should the final answer? What type of sign is the final answer going to have? Well, we have this. The absolute value of -7 is a +7, and the absolute value of 5 is 5. So you notice that 7 is larger. The absolute value of 7 is larger. So you keep the sign of the 7, or the -7 in this case. So the final answer is going to have a negative sign on it. So remember, it always goes back to this final sentence here. You have to make sure that at the end you keep the sign of the number that has the largest absolute value. So let's take a look at another example. Say that we have -3, and we're adding it to a -12. Now we have a -3 plus a -12. Now again, they have the same signs, so that means that because they have the same signs, we're going to add the numbers. So if we add the numbers, 3 and 12 gives us 15. But we got to keep the sign of the largest number, or the absolute value of the largest number. And in this case, the sign here will be a negative, because the absolute value of -12 is larger than the absolute value of a -3. But we might end up having a problem just like this one. Say that we have a -4, and we're adding it to a -4. So what would happen in this case? Well, in this case, they both have the same signs, so by the same rule that we had before, we're going to add. So we're adding 4 plus 4, that's 8. And we're supposed to keep the sign of the largest number, of the absolute value of the largest number. But in this case, you notice that both numbers are exactly the same. So what happens in this case is they just keep the sign. So either number both numbers have the same sign, so it doesn't matter what sign you take because they're both the same. So this is it. Good luck.